Cooperation ends today. It is time for him to pay. Those rhyming lines were aimed at Donald Trump, and they are from one of the many people Donald Trump hates. Today, as every Republican in Congress, in the House, and in the Senate who is running for re-election cowers in fear of Donald Trump every single day of their lives, people who Donald Trump threatens, people who Donald Trump hates as much as he has ever hated anyone, continue to stand up to Donald Trump. And one of them is going to make him pay, and pay very soon. Former Special Prosecutor Jack Smith came to this network today to do the first interview he has ever done about his two federal criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump. Did that interview with Nicole Wallace here at 5 p.m. Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened to imprison Jack Smith, and Jack Smith, who told Congress in public testimony that he developed proof that Donald Trump is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, said today there is nothing Donald Trump can say or do to intimidate him.
I am not going to be intimidated, and there's no way in the world, if the thought was to go after me so that I wouldn't speak up about the corruption that's happening or speak up to defend these agents and prosecutors, that is a grave miscalculation. There is no way I'm going to be intimidated.
And E. Jean Carroll, who is now 82 years old and who has beaten Donald Trump in court repeatedly in two different cases, is now telling Donald Trump it is time to pay up. E. Jean Carroll's most recent crushing of Donald Trump in court came when the United States Supreme Court unanimously rejected Donald Trump's appeal of the $5 million judgment that a federal jury awarded to E. Jean Carroll 3 years ago after finding Donald Trump, as the New York Times put it, quote, liable for sexually abusing and defaming Ms. Carroll. In order to pursue his appeal, Donald Trump had to put the $5 million in an escrow account controlled by the judge in the case. Both sides of the case, Donald Trump's lawyers and E. Jean Carroll's lawyers, at the time agreed that the money would have to be paid as soon as Donald Trump got to the end of the line of his appeals, which is, of course, the denial of a petition for the Supreme Court to hear the case. And that happened on Monday. And immediately, according to E. Jean Carroll's lawyers, Donald Trump's lawyers called E. Jean Carroll's lawyers to ask for an extension on paying the money that Donald Trump now owes E. Jean Carroll in that case. Attorney Roberta Kaplan, who has successfully represented E. Jean Carroll in this case at every stage, told the judge in writing, quote, defendant's counsel contacted Carroll's undersigned counsel to inquire whether Carroll would consent to a further stay of enforcement of the judgment in this action so that defendant can ask the Supreme Court to reconsider its denial. And yeah, I'm kind of laughing about that because the Supreme Court just doesn't reconsider their denials. I mean, theoretically, technically, it's possible, but it's way, way, way less than a 1% chance. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer had a one-word answer for the Trump lawyers: no. And then she immediately filed a motion with the judge saying, quote, the court should enforce the plain language of the existing stipulation and order and direct immediate disbursement of funds, because the $5 million judgment gains interest every day that Donald Trump doesn't pay it, and it has been gaining that interest for 3 years now. The total that Donald Trump actually owes E. Jean Carroll as of Tuesday was $5,779,783, and it has gone up since then because it goes up every day that Donald Trump doesn't pay it. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer reminded the judge of all the delay tactics Donald Trump has used throughout this case over the years and quoted the judge himself as having said in the past that Donald Trump, quote, should not be permitted to run the clock out on a plaintiff's attempt to gain a remedy. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer ended her 9-page motion with these words, quote, "To date, Carroll has agreed to each of defendants' many requests to delay the payment he owes her, given the extraordinary lengths he has taken to avoid such payments, and that each of those efforts has been denied in full. That cooperation ends today. It is time for him to pay. Carroll." The judge gave Donald Trump a deadline of next Tuesday, July 7th, to reply to that motion. It is at this point impossible to foresee any other outcome than the judge ordering Donald Trump to pay the now almost $5.8 million that he owes E. Jean Carroll within a matter of days, probably within this month of July. And so it's time's up for Donald Trump, because E. Jean Carroll says it is. Time's up for Donald Trump because our judicial system was designed to allow a private citizen to have the same rights and powers in a courtroom that anyone else has, even if the other person in the case is currently the President of the United States. And that is why Donald Trump has tried to destroy that system. That is why Donald Trump has tried to poison the federal judiciary with incompetent federal judges like the one he appointed in Florida, whose place in history will be having disgraced herself by doing everything she possibly could to block Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump for violations of the Espionage Act and the illegal possession of classified documents after Donald Trump left the presidency. That is why Donald Trump has poisoned the Justice Department by trying to fill it with people, including an FBI director, with no allegiance or expertise and no allegiance to anything or anyone other than Donald Trump. Donald Trump cannot survive in a federal criminal justice system that actually works. And so he's done everything he can to destroy it, not because of some political or philosophical belief, but entirely as a matter of self-protection. Protection from brave plaintiffs like E. Jean Carroll, who could not be intimidated by Donald Trump, and brave prosecutors like Jack Smith, who could not be intimidated by Donald Trump. Donald Trump can afford the $5.8 million that he owes E. Jean Carroll, and the federal judge handling the case knows that, because like all federal judges in New York City, he must read the New York Times, which has been delivering the best reporting on Donald Trump's profiting from the presidency.